If you think ChatGPT is smart, well, meet SARYA. SARYA is a revolutionary mobile app that combines the power of artificial intelligence with the convenience of real world services. At its core, SARYA is designed to be customer centric and user friendly, offering a wide range of services across various industries like transportation, food and beverages, home services, health and wellness, travel and accommodation, entertainment, and many more. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, joining us all the way from Saudi Arabia, our guest this week is Mohammed Al Rujayi. Mohammed is the founder of Cycles, which is the parent company of this wonderful app, Saria. Mohammed, thank you so much for taking out time and joining us here on the Be Your Own Boss podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sachin. It's a kind introduction from you.
So, Mohammed, let's start with your story, your journey here, right from the beginning. Tell us about your childhood, your parents, your siblings. Where were you born? And let's start from there.
Perfect. So I was born in Riyadh and lived essentially all my life here. I'm the oldest son of my parents, essentially. So there's a lot of experimentations on me. I come from essentially a middle class family. Like my dad is a teacher, my mom is a stay-home mom, but it was an exceptional essentially home to be raised at. My dad was an orphan from a young age, and my mom had a very interesting experience herself. So they essentially imparted unique and wonderful values on me and all my brothers and sister. I was essentially lucky to be in a place where I was allowed essentially to flourish and grow and think be outside the box. And I used to paint from a young age. So I think since I was so it's two things that are very interesting about me is I think I used to talk when I was 20 years old, and I used to paint when I was 3 years old. So those two things stayed all my life till today, as the things that I'm probably good at, which is talking and painting, or having some visual imagination. And my mom especially was very accommodating and very encouraging. Anything that was about expressing myself, whether it was writing something or talking or painting something. At the same time, I was lucky in the sense that I also got introduced to technology very early on in my life. I got introduced to it when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I was fascinated with computers since the first moment that I saw a computer. It's it seems like you're talking to a genie, or you're talking to an alien, or it's what is this? This is the most exciting, interesting thing that a kid can look into. And I didn't know what they do back then, but it's just the thing that you can just sit in a box and talk to it. That was very interesting. I've never cared about technology in the sense that for programming purposes or for the mathematical aspect of it. I was more interested in the artistic aspect of it. Can it help me build the worlds that are in my head, or can I express some of my ideas through this thing? Can it amplify my thinking? That was always the thing that drew me to it. Never was interested in looking at a black screen and just writing text. That was not something that I would be interested in. But ironically, that completely shifted when I graduated high school and went to college. So I went outside Riyadh, for a different town essentially in Saudi for college. And I did.
So where did you go for college?
I went to a famous school here in Saudi called KFPM. Essentially, it's it's a very prestigious technical school. They focused on engineering, all engineering aspects, disciplines. And I chose electrical engineering to do it. I don't know why. It just sounded like it's something that's maybe the hardest discipline major or whatever. Also, this is like a very interesting, when you go outside your like essentially family atmosphere and like your comfort zone, you get exposed to the real world in an interesting way. And I never thought of myself as a technical person up until that point, but I just wanted to do that challenge essentially. It would be fun if I kind of understand and empathize with my artistic side, but to also explore the rigor of mathematics and to explore the depth of technology, even the hardware aspect of it. For me, that sounded very exciting when I was in high school.
And growing up, like as a child, did you have aspirations that that you want to become an entrepreneur like you've become today?
Not at all. No, I thought not even remotely. Like I thought money was like boring, and I thought like I wanted to do like interesting things. Clearly, and I wanted to build things and like do things that like impress people maybe, and like do things that are impactful. But I didn't think of it in a capitalistic framework. I never thought like I always thought of quote unquote business people as very boring people that sit in cubicles and have boring meetings. If I'm being honest, like nothing exciting happens. If anything, I thought of myself as somebody who's probably going to go into academia. I'm being honest. Yeah. So it's very ironic where I ended up in life.
Yeah.
It's so ironic, because when you're a child, you really don't know anything, right? Like you're
right. True.
Yeah.
And so you said that like you were more artistic, and you used to draw and paint. And then when in college you took electronics, how did that transformation happen? Like was it because friends or?
That's an excellent question. So like I always struggled with mental arithmetic. Like I'm not a fast like calculating person. Like if you tell me like 900 times like 33, like I don't know. Like my mind just goes blank. So I don't know how to deal with that. And I always thought that is what technical disciplines are. That they're basically, if you're not a human calculator, that's not for you. The shift in mindset when I went to school was that luckily the school that I went to was pretty good in the sense that they introduced mathematics both from an algebraic point of view, which is what we used to in school, and also geometric point of view, which suit me right away because like I'm a visual thinker and like I paint. So it's like, oh, these are pictures. I can deal with pictures. That's pretty easy. Like once I made that, like once that clicked in my head, like, oh, well, like it's not just like a boring equation. It also can be this picture, and like I have the intuition for that, and it's like, oh, okay. So essentially,
and you could relate with it
immediately, right? Like every time, like I'll get a. It's funny because typically students more or less like are comfortable with algebra. So typically, when a question comes in that's in geometry, I'll be the only one in class who like got the full marks. But I would miss the easy questions because like it was always everything was opposites in school. It was really fun. Yeah, and another thing also was it also I think comes from this artistic side of which is that expressing yourself, and language was always something that I enjoyed, and I always find it fun and interesting and easy to express myself. And once you realize that mathematics is a language, coding is a language. At the time, I was also learning English. It's like English is a language. Like it's all they're all mediums to express ideas. Essentially, they're interfaces to our own thoughts and ideas. And once you also make that connection, like a whole looks like range of doors open up to you, and it's like okay, it's.
And being artistic, and also Arabic being such a poetic language, did you also delve into poetry of some kind?
For sure, yeah. So my dad is super into like history, literature, poetry. Like he's like very well connected with that aspect of that. And then the Arabic Islamic heritage is very deep and goes like for years, like hundreds of years, and he knew a lot about it. And he was like interested in it. So he was essentially my internet. He was like my Wikipedia at the time. And he loved storytelling. Like he's a much better storyteller than I am. And he loved telling stories about his past, about people, about empires in the past, about like cultures in the past. And he loved cultures as well. So he had like that was like deeply enriching to my childhood and definitely affected me. Yeah, Like to this day, I still like enjoy like poetry, especially like Arabic poetry, like old Arabic poetry. It's always something that like deeply fascinates me.
Brilliant. And so let's talk about the college part here. So after you finished your education in electronics engineering, what was the next step?
So yeah, there was a pivotal point, not in my life, I would say in the country's life as a whole, which is very interesting. Like in college, I realized very quickly that academia is not for me. I did an internship at like a research institute, famous research institute here in Saudi. It's like, this takes too long. Like people say like 6 years and 10 years is optimistic. I was like, that's not fun. That doesn't sound like something I'm interested in. 10 years? Whoa, that's too much. And so I knew that academia is my life, and it wasn't really the fit that I was looking for necessarily. And at the same time, I knew like from my like high school days that I didn't want to do like a regular job. And honestly, I don't think anybody would, even today's age. Like the concept of work keeps being reinvented like, year over year to this day. So I didn't want to sit in a cubicle. And what was fun was that, and interesting was, there was a change in leadership here in Saudi, and 2030, the Vision 2030 was being essentially built and developed, and to a certain extent like implemented, or some aspects of it was implemented. And that was like a golden age for consulting, essentially, like management consulting. So people like companies like the big three, McKinsey and BCG, to a certain extent, being like deep into into this ecosystem. And I was recruited out of college by the Boston Consulting Group, and I thought that was interesting. Like I get to, I'm a kid, I just graduated. And I get to essentially be important. And, like, go on part of the meetings and see like vision and like all this economic stuff. It sounded very, very interesting for me. And not because I necessarily liked it, but it's just like nothing else seems to be like I seem to connect with it. And this sounded like something different. And it wasn't like a traditional career path for people with my profile. Typically people like me would go to Aramco, like an oil company or something like that. That was very interesting. And I got recruited out of college to do that, and I did that for a few years actually. I did it with the Boston Consulting Group for maybe a year, and then I went and co-founded a startup with another Saudi person that did also consulting. And we were thinking, like after a year, you very, very much like realize it's like, okay, I can do this. Honestly, like it's like especially if I find like if you have a niche, and our niche back then, like after years like working there, like our niche was essentially like, since my background is kind of technical and I kind of understood the consulting work, there was a lot of potential for big data and like using data essentially to derive these high level like economic policies and those long-term horizons and data. Like we cannot ignore data, especially with all these methods and techniques that were coming back then. That was like 2018, 2017. It was a while ago. So I did that as a co-founder for 3 years. So I did essentially 4 years in this, I think.
Mm. And when you co-founded this company with your friend, what was the financial? What about the financial aspect there? Like, did it require a lot of investment from your side to start this company?
Yeah. So essentially, that's a great question. This is probably like me realizing that I actually, like, contrary to my own belief for all these years, would thrive in business or in a business environment. The uncertainty of it, I found it something that's like very fascinating for me. Like it's like the answer. Like I realized that I actually like instability and like uncertainty and like ambiguity, and operate at my best at these environments. Because I'm like I don't know, I can't really prepare for it, so it's always exciting. It's always something like that challenges me. It made me feel alive a little bit. So I enjoyed that bit a lot, and I love the concept of like a meritocracy. Essentially, I'm not giving a salary. Like essentially, like I can eat what I kill, and that mindset made me a little bit hopeful. Like I can essentially, if I push I'll be compensated as much as I can push myself, and there is essentially no limit to that. And the idea of being like at the time 24, 25, taking like a piece of the cake essentially, even at that age, was very empowering for me. Like it's just it changed my perspective about it changed my perspective about what to even expect out of myself, which is like it used to be that if I went to a career or a traditional essentially career path, things you cannot really go above limit. You can't really move a lot. Like there's certain limits that you can go over.
Yeah.
This environment, there's a lot of uncertainty, and the reward for operating at that uncertainty, like unlimited potential, right? Like unlimited reward. Like you can get really anything, and that just made me really hopeful. It sounded very fun, regardless of the financial aspect of it. It sounded fun. It sounded like I don't know what's gonna happen. Maybe we'll make it. Maybe we'll not. That really. This is where I realized that actually a lot of business activities essentially comes down to this uncertainty and risk and decision making with partial information, and like being in a phase of discovery, but also having also a pressure on focus and delivery. It was terribly exciting, especially.
So yeah, and for the audience, for the listeners who are, let's say, who are based in Saudi, who in that environment, who would like to start a company. Let's say they're working somewhere and and have that aspiration, they want to start their own company. What was that process like for you? Did you have to register the company? Talk us through that process to help the audience understand that aspect here.
Yeah, it essentially comes down to a little bit of luck and a little bit of homework. Essentially, I certainly was lucky to essentially know the right people, get also know the right piece of information, being at the right time at the right I wouldn't even suggest that career path today, but it's just a lot of it has to do with timing, and also everything is on the internet today. You can get far knowing a lot, and if you can find it on the internet, you can always go on LinkedIn and go to somebody that you look up to or find interesting. You reach out to them. You'd be surprised how open most people to tell you stuff. So don't be afraid of asking people, and also it's their window essentially. A little bit of luck has to play part of it. You have to do your part, and you have to be lucky as well.
Yeah, and so let's talk about the further part of it. Then after that, so once you started this company, you're working with your friend, your partner, and you're serving clients. I mean, you're offering them consulting, right?
Yeah.
Right. And how long did that stint go, and how did it evolve after that?
Yeah, it went on for 3 years, and back then, I think towards the end of it, I think 2019, I was on 27, and I always kind of told myself that I have a hard deadline to find the place that a place where I will spend 10 or 20 years of my life in. And that deadline is 30. And I knew that consulting wasn't something that was long term for me. It was interesting. Definitely, I grew a lot in it. I got to challenge myself in a lot of aspects of things that are weaknesses of me or strengths. But I would say after the first year, it was kind of okay, and the third year was essentially work as usual, and I ended up back into what I call cubicle life. I was okay, you have a team and things are stable, and it's it's not it's just it's they say things weren't as challenging as they used to, and there's a certain growth limit that I've just hit personally. I'm not going to go beyond that growth limit, and I knew that. It was comfortable. That's the tricky part of it. It was comfortable financially. It was status wise. It was it was pretty good. Everything about it was very comfortable. But it wasn't fulfilling, at least for me. For me, it wasn't fulfilling, and I knew that like I knew that I wanted to do something that, like, that's the tricky part about consulting. It can sometimes be like abstract. It can be like away from the people. It can be like, a very disconnected exercise. And I wanted something that I can show to my mom or show to my friends, and they don't have to think a lot, and they say, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." Like for me, that was always very fulfilling thing to do.
Yeah.
Even if it's not financially stable, even if it doesn't make a lot of sense, just showing it to people, like normal people, showing something that you've built to normal people, and them saying, "Oh, that's interesting," or like, "I want to use that." It doesn't even have to be said, "Wow." It doesn't have to be like a massive reaction. Just saying, like, "Okay, we get each other." That always for me felt extremely fulfilling and magical, and I wanted to do that. So I knew that my next move would be product, in consumer product. And throughout my work with technology, whether in college or in my professional life, I always knew that our relationship with computers and with technology was not ideal. Everybody, like the typical image essentially of like a programmer or like a developer is like a robot, essentially like a computer. Like that's essentially the stereotype, right? Like it's not somebody who you can have carry like a normal conversation. And there's a lot of truth to that, because in order to deal with machines and technology, you think like a computer. And if you do that long enough, you might become a computer. Like, you know what I mean? And clearly that is not the way to go. And I'll give like a bunch of examples why that is. And I don't think a lot of people will disagree. Like my goal was computers and technology should think more like humans, if that makes sense. Like we shouldn't empathize with the machine should empathize with us. Like it shouldn't be like an unnatural thing. It should be in such a way where it's almost undifferentiated experience from talking to a normal person. And for like 4 years I was saying conversation with the machine, and like let's have a conversation with the machine like in a natural way. Like our brains, like we even think with ourselves in terms of conversation. We have dialogues with ourselves. Like right now we're having it like a conversation, right? Like, and you go out, you have a conversation with your kids, right? Like that's how we think. We don't think in terms of buttons and drop down menus. It's not how, or like, like arcane symbols, whatever. But the technology wasn't there yet. And when you start on something like that, it's very hard for people to really see the vision of it, because you talk to people and say, "Oh, you mean like a chatbot? Chatbots suck. Like all chatbots suck." Because everybody who uses this chatbot is essentially like got like a bad customer experience. It's like it's not a great experience. And then like essentially like beginning of this year, with all this craziness around ChatGPT and with AI technology and like conversational aspect of AI, people now see it. People say, "Oh, this is the way to go." Like, there's no way we're going to press buttons anymore. Like we want to just talk to it. Like everybody loves WhatsApp and loves their like Telegrams. Like, come on, like it almost even seems like a no-brainer. And that's essentially what we're trying to achieve in SARYA, which is take this aspect of technology empathizing with humans, a conversation with the machine that is natural, and link it to real-world services. Like there's a lot of interesting things that you can do with AI today, like summarize an email or give recommendations or talk to it when you're lonely. I don't think that's very interesting for me. Like there is market to that, and I get it, but day-to-day people don't care about writing an email or like suggesting 10 things. Like I don't think like it's still a gimmick, right? Like they care, like they have a daily lifestyle. They want to go from A to Z. They want to go to work. They want to buy something. They want to like. They're not really married to, like, they don't think of themselves like technologists or anything. They just want something to make their life easy and more integrated and valuable and meaningful. And if you link that magic to the real world, I think very interesting things can happen. And that's essentially what we're trying to do in SARYA, like trying to like unleash it to the world.
So you realize that with technology, you want people to be using technology to solve real world day-to-day issues rather than just having, write an article for you or something. You don't write articles every day. Yeah.
Like not for power users, for normal people, like kids, and like old people, like different cultures even. people from different cultures, different like nuances of that culture look like that. Yeah, like that makes me very excited.
Yeah. So when you got this idea of of creating something like this, how long was that process of bringing that from an idea to the app in hand?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's where things get less glamorous. It was a tough journey. Like it wasn't easy at all. And I was lucky and blessed to have my co-founder Khalid, who essentially like believed in it as much as I did, because for a long time we were the only people who believed in it. It took us, I would say, like the whole thing, like we took it serious. I would say seriously, like it's been 2 years, but probably it's more than that. It's probably 2.5 years or 3 years of, because it went through a lot of iterations of like, is like from just an argument to something that could be a possibility, from like to a prediction to a prototype to a business model, then like probably like 10 other prototypes. Like we've rewritten and refined the ideas so many times, like along those years, and we had to learn a lot about this stuff as well. Like I had some technical knowledge, but it was more toward like analytics and data. My co-founder also comes from that tradition. We weren't essentially like we weren't invested in like building mobile apps and thinking about AI or thinking about like end consumers or like building systems. We had to learn this stuff ourselves. Like we are essentially technical founders. Me and my co-founder both also coded the app ourselves, and there was a lot of essentially. It was a blessing, but and a curse at the same time, because when it was an asset, it was great because you're the technical person and the business person, so there is not a lot of communication lag and there's not a lot of like back and forth, so you can just move fast. But when things got tough, you were always the bottleneck for the business and the technical stuff. So it was like a wild roller coaster for a few years, and. I think we were early as well. I think we were like maybe a year or a year and a half early than the market, and that was also tough because you see it, but nobody else does, and that's always like a challenging thing. Because like there is this cognizance.
I mean, people don't know what it is, right? So, and this is the time when you started, ChatGPT didn't exist at that time.
No,
or not at least in the public eye.
No,
people didn't know about it.
Yeah, like we were, like we were back then. We were thinking that we're gonna take search technology essentially and repurpose it to essentially act like a chat. So we didn't even think about LLMs or like deep learning, or like we just wanted something practical. For me, up until like a year and a half ago, all the stuff about neural networks was still like not something that is ready for mass market yet. And for me, like search technology was much more interesting and mature. Everybody was familiar with search. Search technology was very well understood, and repurposing that for like to act like a conversation for me and the company sounded like the way to go. But it was surprising for everybody that those large language models now outperform search like 10x, like immediate. And the switch wasn't hard for us because I never looked at us as like an AI technology company as much as we are essentially a product company. Like I didn't care about the technical. Like I wasn't married to like a technical paradigm or the other. I was married to the idea of delivering a conversation to people. So the switch was,
you're tied to the value of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I understand right, your concept was that if I could go to the app and have a conversation in a conversational tone, I could say something. The chat would interpret, the app would interpret that and go search the internet for information related to what I'm asking and come back with me and reply to me in a conversational tone?
No, it's no, which comes as a surprise for most people. That's what a lot of like models do already. Like if you go to Bing today, you can search for like book me a flight, but then it'll essentially suggest to you oh, go to this website and book a flight there. There is like that always came to me as a user as like a massive disappointment. It's like So it's just search plus plus. Like it's nothing. Like, you didn't change anything. We were very certain that the way to go is to have an integrated experience. So we actually go to partners and actually do deals with them and integrate their API end to end with our apps, such that you don't have to leave essentially the app at all. So like you'll get everything within the app. There's no context switching. Like your train of thought does not get interrupted, if that makes sense. And you get like an offer, you get it in the app. It's like a native feel to it, and when you click to it, you pay within the app, and everything is like Apple Pay. So you don't have like to bring your card or whatever. Like it's very smooth that way, and you can switch between like discovery and conversion almost subconsciously. There is no paradox of choice. You don't have to open like a million tabs and go on like an epic search of like what's the best this and that. You know what I mean? Like it's like I wouldn't even give you a lot of choices. Like the app wouldn't give you a lot of choices. The app will just say this works, and if you trust the brand, and we always put the brand that we're serving you from. Like we don't hide that way. Like we essentially try to promote those brands, and we get paid essentially through like a commission model. So it's from day zero. It's deeply it's like deeply integrated. It's like end to end integrated. Yeah. And there's a lot of value to that for people, because people, when they see the Apple Pay button in the app, it's always like a magical moment. It's like, oh, that's it. Like I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to sign somewhere. Like that's it. Perfect. Because it's like a moment of truth. It's like, oh, this is. I can get used to that.
And I'm telling you, when I saw on your brochure, when I saw that you can pay on the app, and I saw the Apple Pay button there, and I was like, wow, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
And well done, man. Well done. This is brilliant.
Thank you. It was a lot of work. But yeah.
A lot of work, definitely. Yeah. And what about the name? How did how did you all come up with SARYA as the name? What's the meaning?
Yeah. So that's it. Yeah. That's So SARYA, it has its roots essentially in Arabic, as you can imagine. And SARYA comes from the root sar, which means to move, essentially, or in movement. SARYA means in Arabic that which moves, or that thing which moves. And I always loved the idea. Like today, when you look at today's apps, they're optimizing for you to sit. They're mini TVs essentially. That like they're optimized for you to sit down and have a mini TV for 6 hours. And they're optimizing for engagement, and they're optimizing for like, okay, stay. Here's something more that you can look at. Here's something more to look at. And it can get, and it is already out of hand today. Like it's like but I think everybody struggles sometimes. Like, why did I spend 2 hours on YouTube? Like, why? You can go into a rabbit hole that way. And I always wanted to use an app that didn't optimize for engagement, that actually optimized for me to go to the real world, right? Like it said, no, this is something in the real world. Like go to this sporting event, go to this, go outside. You know what I mean? Like move, like just like
move.
Yeah. Move. Yeah. And don't stay on the app. The screen is just a conversation. Just talk to it to get stuff done and move and go out. Connect with the real world. Use technology not to isolate you, not to put you in your room and your couch. Use technology to empower you to go out and explore the world, like as not an alternative to reality, but like as an enabler of reality.
Yeah.
And the key word here is like smooth. Sorry.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And what about the name of the company, Cycles? What's the story?
I mean, like we all like there is a core tenet of when I co-founded the company, culture was essentially the number one concept in my mind, even clearer than like building a product or having a conversation with the machine, because I realized quickly and early in my life that you can do great things if you don't bring in the right people under the right culture. And there is two essentially, and I think we put them on our website. There's essentially two principles of culture that we operate by. I mean, there's all the boring stuff about have transparency, like integrity, whatever, like all these things, but that does not really resonate with people because essentially we're desensitized to a lot of that. But our core tenet, like our core principles in the company truly are two things, which is number one, fail fast. And number two is less is more. And fail fast, what I mean by that is that they're very different opposing forces. Fail fast is essentially don't think too much. If you have an idea, just try it. Experiment in the environment. Accelerate failure. Do not be afraid of failure. Do it as fast as you can. Have a culture that accepts that and accepts that you failed. And we always say, like, we have a saying in the company, which is basically, if you're not failing, you're not working. If somebody's not optimizing for failure, they're not working. Like, they're optimizing for comfort, essentially. Somebody's working when they're failing because they're trying stuff and like they're pushing boundaries. Then there is another essentially perspective, which is after you failed a lot, there is like an internal, like introspective mindset that kicks in, which is that less is more, which is you don't need a lot of engineers, you don't need a lot of money, you don't need a lot of whatever it is, you don't need a lot of time, you don't just simplify all your learnings. Don't overfit. Don't try to. Do not like constrain your thinking and attitude with resources. Oh, I can do this because I don't have this much or that thing. And then that becomes like a very empowering thing, even in engineering, which is like, do you really need all this sophisticated? Nobody cares. Like go and deliver a value to the customer. You don't have to build like an elaborate thing for yourself to feel good about yourself. Like you will realize very quickly that that's the way to go. Essentially, like you cannot scale if your system is complicated. Like simplicity is, for me at least, is synonym with scale. Something that which is not simple cannot scale. And essentially every time you go to that, like the essence of thing, like less is more is about finding the true core magic of your learnings and your experience. Like remove all this noise that you accumulated. Go to the source. Always go to try capture the essence of the problem, the essence of the product, the essence of whatever activity you're doing. And those go in cycles, essentially. That's where the name comes from. We're either failing fast or, we're cutting things where less is more. And we've been doing that for years now. It's almost like I have a T-shirt for failing fast, and I should probably do one for less is more. And those things lots of things changed in the company. Those two principles stayed and they're ingrained in us. They're part of being a
Got it. So fail fast and less is more, and it's a cycle.
It is for sure.
Yeah. Mohammed, I want to go a couple of steps back here and talk about this again, touch upon the financial part here. And the reason why I want to go there is a lot of the aspiring entrepreneurs, the biggest fear they have is that if I quit my job to start my business, how am I going to pay my bills? Right?
You might not to. You might actually not to. And like opening a startup and starting a startup is fundamentally an irrational decision. I think that's the first thing you have to realize. Like that's like, if you are somebody who is rational, probably a startup is not for you. Startup is predicated on essentially pushing a boundary and doing something that has not been done before. And by definition, it means that the problem is not understood. There is no projection can be made, lots of uncertainty, very irrational. And it has to do a lot with character and attitude than it does with arguments and logic, if that makes any sense. It's not something you sit down with yourself and open an Excel sheet and say, well, if I get this much money and do this much and then play it responsibly, I'll do this, I'll do it. There is a place for that, but not in the early days of a startup, especially if you're thinking quitting your job. That a lot to do with like, there will be dark days. Will I be resilient? Will I survive those things? Like personally, am I emotionally ready to take something like that? Am I emotionally ready not to sleep like a week or two because I might not make payroll, or I might not, things might not go the way I thought they're gonna go to. Like, will I be okay? Will I be okay making certain compromises? So a lot has to do with it, you know. Like a lot of it has to do with your personality and attitude. Then it has to do with logic and arguments and Excel sheets and like plans. And
In your
yeah.
in your own case, do you remember any of going through those days, those tough days, not worrying about like not making payroll, for example? So, and how did you deal with those?
Yeah, I mean, the first year was like brutal, right? Like it was very tough because what you have essentially is a story, and you tell that, like the company essentially is a story that you tell yourself and tell people, and you try to find people who can believe in that story. And for a year, that is what you're trying to do essentially. Like I remember that once I quit my job, like I had a bunch of like I mean, clearly some money put up, and like I'm trying to play it responsibly, but after like a month, I think after quitting my job, a month or two, like I didn't sleep for 2 weeks because I just realized that there is nothing, like there's no money that's gonna come, like like I have to make it now, I wasn't even like, I did it, I wasn't ready for it, because you're never ready for something that's by definition a challenge, and then you say, oh okay, like something in my brain has to change, like the incentive model is different now, like any decision that I make affects me, affects people around me, affects people that I hire. It's a very different thing, right? I can't, like, this is not like certain compromises have to be made, certain sacrifices have to be made, and for a year, that's all what I did. I had to sacrifice a lot. Like I had to sacrifice. Like I'm not gonna go. Like I can't have fun on weekends if I'm like building a startup. Like that does not make sense. Especially if it's a technical startup with product and AI. Like you can't have fun on weekends and do that. And then so that has to go away, and that was very tough. And certain things about financially, like I was like coming from like just like left a very comfortable financially lucrative position, and now I have to change my lifestyle completely. I have to live like I was living in college, essentially, in order, like, because I didn't know how long will this make. Is it gonna take like a year, 2 years, 3 years? Like, is it gonna work? Not work? So I had to come back to like essentially living frugally and like essentially truly embracing less is more, and like making myself feel like, yeah, like you can't really travel like you used to. You can't really hang out like you used to. You can't do any of these things like you used to. At the same time, if you want to like you are now going to manage people, and if you don't manage yourself properly, you can't manage other people. So you have to really dig down within yourself and find a bunch of habits that are liabilities essentially for building that company, and like get rid of those habits. And I wasn't somebody who's very disciplined. I was like a chaotic person, but like I really realized quickly and immediately that if people are will depend on you and are dependent on you, and you need to be a little bit like a symbol of stability. Even when you're tough and challenging things, you need to be stable yourself, and you can't really, like you have to change certain things about yourself. And I took that as a challenge, and a lot, yeah, like a lot of it, yeah, like so many, like you have to do a lot of sacrifices. You have to give up a lot of things. You have to truly be like singularly focused on this, take it really seriously. And when somebody else is not taking it seriously with you, you have to be decisive. You have to say, maybe that doesn't fit us. Like we're pushing for certain things that you might not be pushing it with us. Things are like right now are uncertain, so that might not be the right place for you. And that's a really tough thing. It's like a whole different beast when you go and try to preach that mindset to other people. Like, let's say, like, miraculously, you convince yourself to go through all these sacrifices and, like determination. And you say, okay, like, I did it to myself. Okay, fantastic. That's not enough. Now you have to go and do it for 3 other people. And then you have to first find those 3-4 people and then convince them to do that as well. And yeah, it can be a very tough and dark experience, and it can be an extremely fulfilling and exciting challenge as well. It has those two aspects of it. And for somebody who enjoys uncertainty, yeah.
Brilliant, man. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
You've
as I'm saying this, I'm like recalling a lot of past memories, like a lot of past experiences. So like,
yeah. Now, talking about the past experiences here. Now, if you look back at your journey from the artistic boy, from the from the young boy who wanted to just paint and have fun, to the entrepreneur that you've become, the businessman that you've become, who would you like to give the credit to for your success?
I mean, I'm a religious person, so I'm gonna say like Allah, like God, essentially. That's gonna be number one for sure. That I'm blessed to have even alive and experience it the way I experience it. Like a lot of the gifts that I have are not things that I essentially worked hard for. Like I was born with a lot of that. And beyond that, for sure, my parents, my mom especially, and my dad as well. Like being in the right environment when you're young it can be very, very beneficial for you. And third, and that might be surprising for a lot of people, I would say the internet. The internet is probably my third parent. Like, my parents are old school. They don't like it's not like they, like they understand, like know anything about technology or like physics or like math or like science. Like you very traditional people. And for a guy who was curious, a kid who was curious and wanted to learn a lot and wanted to experience things that are beyond just their atmosphere, the internet was a magical window that, like, I, attribute a lot of the things that I know from the internet. 100%.
Yeah. Wow, man. This is, I asked this question on my show to all my guests about, who would you like to give the credit? And I just realized you're the first person who called out the internet and thanked the internet. And I'm just realizing that's so true.
Yeah.
Had it not been for the internet, we wouldn't have learned so many things, right? Yeah. And Mohammed, for the people who are in that early stage of either they're working right now somewhere and they plan to start their own company, or they've just started now, what would be your advice to them, having experienced what you've experienced?
That's a great question to hear. I'm going to quote Mark Andreessen on this. I heard him recently on the Lex Friedman podcast, and he was asked the same question, and he gave a wonderful answer for that, which is, great entrepreneurs don't listen to anybody. And I think that's even in my case, I'm not great by any measure, but like I didn't think I listened. Like any major decision in my life, I really did not listen to anybody. And I think my advice would be, don't listen to anybody. Listen to yourself. That's the only person you're going to count on. Like there is no guideline for this. There is things online, but you're on your own on this. From today, have confidence and listen to yourself. Build that relationship with yourself. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Very well said, Mohammed. Very well said. And how was your experience being on the show?
It's perfect. I had a lot of fun, honestly, talking to you and all the questions you asked. It's pretty good. I'm really grateful for you having me. It's wonderful talking to you. It's great. I know it was a long time in the making, but I'm really glad I made it. So,
I'm glad we made it finally. Yes. Mohammed, thank you so much for taking our time and sharing your journey and your story with us. Such a wonderful story, such a wonderful journey. Well done, and thank you.
Thank you for having me, Sachin. I had a lot of fun.
So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that was Mohammed Al Rujayi, the founder of Cycles, the parent company of SARYA, and you've been watching and listening to Be Your Own Boss.